choosing the right structure to set up your business is a source of anxiety for people. Keith, they're speaking with Keith Girouard, who is from the Mass Small Business Development Center Network, because it's very formal. I mean, it's your first step into creating a business and then choosing the right structure, because there are several structures to choose from. You know, it's important to get off on the right foot.
Yeah, it is important, and particularly in certain situations, it's perhaps more important than others. So getting the right structure for your business, we're talking legal business structure, is important. And there's a number of considerations that you'd want to have, or you want to think about. Certainly the complexity or the simplicity of your business, or the business functions or operations, is important. That would be one consideration. Your need for the level of personal liability protection would be another. If that's high or if that's low. If you're going for investment, investors often prefer certain types of business structures. There's some tax considerations, and there's other kinds of things. But those are some of the, just generally at first blush, would be some of the considerations you'd be thinking about.
And there are several examples of what people they could do a sole proprietorship, which seems like you know, a simpler process, but maybe not.
Right.
And then there's a small corporation, which seems like a fancy title, but you know, it's actually not that complex. You know, these types of things, they all have different, you know, ways. Accountants will tell you different advice than a lawyer would.
Sure. Yeah. So your attorney would probably advise you around the legal aspects, and your accountant around the financials. Generally, when we're working with people in terms of business structures other than sole proprietorships, we generally suggest that they get an opinion from their counsel in regards, because each situation is a little bit different. But you can still, and I have some suggestions of how people can approach this, they can still go through this, and even if they do approach their counsel, they'll be probably more informed, and therefore it would perhaps cost less money for them to do it, and being informed is a good thing. So I could talk a little bit about some of the criteria. There's generally 4 criteria that you'd want to consider when you're thinking about a business structure. One is continuity. The other is legal liability protection. A third is how taxes are handled. And the fourth, how control is exercised. So using that criteria, we're generally dealing with 4 different business type structures in Massachusetts. Now there are more, but generally from our chair, these are the 4 structures we're dealing with: sole proprietors, subchapter S corporations, C corporations, which are your regular corporations, and last is LLCs, or limited liability companies. So if we were to take those 4 criteria, we can kind of go through each one of those structures.
So I mean, if you are, you know, for instance, if you're a retail store or something, or you know, versus, I don't know, a car dealership, you know, each one of those types of businesses would have generally maybe a more beneficial way to go as far as that goes. So is there one you like the best?
No. No, there's not one I like the best, because it all depends upon what the business need is, and again, some of the personal needs of the business owner. But for example, like if we're talking about sole proprietorships, which is often very popular because it's simple, it's easy to do, you just register with your municipality. It doesn't offer any continuity, and it doesn't offer any legal liability protection, and that may be important for people. All the other structures do, but this doesn't. Tax considerations, if you're thinking about tax considerations and how taxes are handled, sole proprietors, chapter sub S corporations, and LLCs all have pass-through taxations. So that means that essentially the profits of the business, in one form or another, you have to fill out different forms and a little bit different processing. They basically get transferred to you as income as the owner, and then you declare it as income tax. You know, C corporations, your regular corporations, have 2-tier taxations, which means basically that at the corporate level you pay taxes on the profit, and then as you receive either through revenue, either through dividends or salary, you pay income tax on that. So that's a little bit different. Control, if you're thinking about, if control is important and you want to think about control for sole proprietorships, pretty straightforward. You're the business owner, you make the decisions. In both the corporations, it's really done by the shareholders and the board of directors and the officers of the board, which doesn't need to be complicated. It can be pretty straightforward. You could have 1 or 2 people in those positions. LLCs, the controls are exercised to the members, and their members' roles, responsibilities, rights are all defined in what's called an operating agreement. So those are essentially continuity, legal liability protection, how taxes are handled, and how control is exercised.
Right. The old rule of thumb, and it may be true or it may not be true, is that accountants love small corporations, S-Corps, but attorneys love LLCs because of maybe more flexibility as far as that goes. I know every example is different, but
Right.
that's one of those rules of thumb that you hear. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
Yeah, from our perspective, the accountants, it changes depending upon how the tax code changes to some degree. Again, it's all about what your individual tax situation is, and I think accountants would generally agree with that. And your attorney's looking after your vulnerabilities, your legal vulnerabilities, and so that's probably a paramount consideration for them.
Speaking with Keith Girouard from the Mass Small Business Development Center Network, I'm John Krol on the BBT. We'll continue the conversation after this.